history and a couple of shotguns.
I thought this was an easy job. Sounds like D-Day.
Now, don't you give those guns a thought. I'll take care of them.
I'm not thinking about the guns. I'm thinking about the chain.
Don't worry about it, boy. He'll be right there with you. All you have to do is carry the sandwiches in a white monkey jacket and give him a big smile and say yes, sir. You don't have to worry, you don't have to think. We'll take care of you.
You have to start now.
Don't beat out that Civil War jazz here, sweetheart. We're all in this together, each man equal, and we're taking care of each other. It's one big play, a one and only chance to grab stakes forever. And I don't want to hear what your grandpappy thought on the old farm down in Oklahoma. You got it?
That was Robert Ryan, Harry Belafonte, and Ed Begley Sr. in a scene from Odds Against Tomorrow from 1959, a little film noir directed by Robert Wise. On The Greatest Movies You Never Heard Of, Part 10, I believe, by Kris Kondrad. It's a film noir, 1959, one of the final years of film noir. Film noir was a genre of film that ran from 1941, began with The Maltese Falcon, directed by the great John Huston, and ended, according to film historians, with Cape Fear in 1960. So this is on the tail end of it. And film noir basically was a dark-themed movies with stark camera angles and high contrast lighting, a lot of shadows. And you got movies about bank heists and mobsters and femme fatales and private eyes and murders and malicious hearts and moral conflict. And this film is basically a heist film, but you also have elements of the mob in. Here you got Gloria Graham in the background. She was probably in more film noir than any actress alive or dead. Well, dead now. But anyway, it's the story. Ed Begley Jr. or Ed Begley Sr. is an old man who's sick of living in a flop house and dreams of one big score. So he finds the perfect bank to rob about an hour outside of New York City. And most of the movie takes place in New York, and there's some great shots of New York back in 1959. But he finds a small town just an hour west of New York and cases a bank, and he needs to enlist two men, one white and one black, when the movie will explain why. So he enlists the aid of Harry Belafonte and Robert Ryan, both reluctantly. Harry Belafonte is a jazz musician, but he's got a gambling habit and is in deep with the mob, who's now coming after his family, so he's got to get some money quick. Robert Ryan's been in and out of prison, most recently for beating a man to death. And he's trying to go straight, but he's living with Shelley Winters, who I've mentioned in my Place in the Sun review, a great actress, and she's great in this film. But he's kind of her errand boy. He's sick of being her bitch. He's running around getting her laundry and doing errands for her. And, he's beating a man to death. He's a manly guy, and he's not feeling so manly. So he's reluctantly joins in with the heist. And most reluctantly because he doesn't want to work with a colored guy, as he refers to Harry Belafonte, and that's the nicest thing he calls him. He's just an unrelenting racist. And it's funny because he played a racist in Bad Day Black Rock, a movie I highlighted on this show earlier, and he also plays one in Crossfire, a film noir from the early 40s, where he beats a Jewish guy to death, and supposedly it's the first film to actually deal with racism. So I don't know if Robert Ryan was a racist, but he sure played one a lot in movies. But even when he's detestable, and he's a detestable human in this scene, seducing his neighbor, even though she's good friends with Shelley Winters, who's supporting him, he's still a great actor. But Harry Belafonte is a revelation here. He's plays a jazz artist, and we actually get to see him playing the xylophone and singing some great jazz numbers, and the great jazz soundtrack throughout the film. And he wasn't in a lot of movies. Uptown Saturday Night, of course, a fun movie from the 70s, and Buck and the Preacher, a Western film alongside the great Sidney Poitier from the 70s. But I think this is his best performance. Therein lies the pathos. He's got an ex-wife and a little daughter, and there's some really heartbreaking scenes with them. And the movie deals with race on other levels, not just with Robert Ryan's racist character. Let's take a look at this scene.
For what? To hold hands with those old fake friends of yours?
I'm trying to make a world fit for Edie to live in. It's a cinch you're not going to do it for the deck of cards in a racing form.
But you are, huh? You and your big white brothers. Drink enough tea with them and stay out of the watermelon patch. And maybe our little colored girl grow up to be Miss America, is that it?
I won't listen when you talk like that. You better go.
Why don't you wise up, Ruth? It's their world and we're just living in it.
That's just a heartbreaking scene. And just a really well acted film and beautifully directed. It's directed by Robert Wise, who's most famous for The Sound of Music, the only musical I like, unless you count Team America World Police. That's a great film, Sound of Music. And he also directed West Side Story. He also directed The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original, not the abysmal remake with Keanu Reeves. He started out doing horror films for Val Lewton, and then he went on to do film noir. He did The Setup in 1949 with Robert Ryan, and then went on to do Born to Kill, starring Lawrence Tierney, the gravelly-voiced actor that Tarantino loved so much he put in as the boss man who arranged the heist in Reservoir Dogs. But it's just an intense movie here. The heist scene is intense, and of course, something's bound to go wrong, as it always does in film noir. And the movie gets very suspenseful and intense. There's some good action and some violence. And again, the race issue at the forefront is just very interesting, ahead of his time. And there's even a gay mobster, which you don't often see in today's cinema, much less back then. So just a movie way ahead of its time, beautifully directed, wonderfully written by Abraham Polanski, who wrote Force of Evil, one of Scorsese's favorite film noirs, and also Body and Soul, the boxing film with John Garfield, and even the remake with Leon Isaac Kennedy in the 70s. So well written, well directed, well acted, just a great film noir from 1959. Odds Against Tomorrow. Check it out. Until next time, thanks for joining me on The Greatest Movies You Never Heard of, Part 10.